Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. This is Lynn with Midlife Carnivore, and I am so happy today to have my guest, Carrie, from My Metamorphosis, emphasis on metamorphosis. And if you have watched our book club meetings, you will know that Carrie is one of the book club ladies who joins with me on Sundays. Now we've taken 2 weeks off, but we have been going through the Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung, and she is one of those voices that we are weighing in on our opinion on what's going on with that book and really enjoying it. Hi, Mike. Good to see you. Don't forget the O.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we did not forget the O. Yes, we made
Yeah,
sure.
you have to spell it with the O or you won't find me.
That's right. That's right. So, I've spent so much time conversing with Carrie about the book, but I haven't had an opportunity to really get to hear a whole lot. I mean, I listened to your channel, but didn't get to hear and converse with you and talk to you about your carnivore story. We got a lot of people on here.
Yes. Hi, my
Lovely.
friends. We got
Yay.
Bruce,
So glad you're
Renee.
all here. They're talking amongst themselves already. Love it.
The usual suspects.
Yep. Yep. So, anyways, so I'm so happy to have Carrie, and we were chatting behind the scenes, and I swear, I think we could probably chat forever. We were like, I almost lost track. It's like
I know. Well, and then it's easy for me to do. I mean, I'm a talker.
we're both talkers. So, anyways, I'm so happy to have you, and I wanted
Thank
to
you.
just give you a platform. I know you have your platform. I wanted to bring you on and join our audiences, and so that you can share your story. So if you would start with just wherever you feel comfortable, share with what led into you becoming a carnivore.
Well, my mother in the early 2000s, I'm thinking it was 2001, but I know there was a time frame in there where we were trying to figure out what was going on with her, and she was diagnosed with diabetes, but then there was other issues going on. But anyway, so from about 2001, my mother was diagnosed with diabetes, and so she just went on this trajectory of taking medication. And throughout the years, I watched her health just like slowly declining.
And how old
And
was she when she was diagnosed?
it was her, let's see, she was born in 36. So I guess, what, like 65? I
Okay.
think. I think she was 65. Yeah, that would be about right. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and my grandfather also had type 2 diabetes as well. He was
Okay.
diagnosed in his 60s. So, in retrospect, I'm not so sure that things run in families. I'm not sure about genetics about things, but of course, we just always kind of said, oh, diabetes runs in our family.
Yeah. When it's
But
probably the diet
a big part of it
that's the
was
culprit.
probably the diet. Yeah. And of course, now, I mean, they would probably just get it at a younger age, considering the food that
Right.
we're told to eat now. I mean, because I think there could be some sort of a genetic component, maybe, but I digress. So she was diagnosed, and I noticed as the years went by that she was just not engaging in things that she used to engage in. She went from just taking, I'm not sure what the oral medication was. It could have been metformin, but I know that there was an issue too of where she actually lost too much weight when she was first diagnosed with diabetes, and there was some kind of, and I'm thinking that they had given her metformin first
Okay.
and that it made her lose weight, and so they had to give her something else. And so anyway, but she was on that. And the thing is, I know she knew better, but I think that the medical community nowadays, or even back then in 2001, it's like, oh, well, you can eat what you want, just make sure that you take enough insulin to account for that.
Right.
And so that was what she did. And so she used to be a slim person, and then she just gradually started gaining weight and gaining weight, and then it just got to where she started having more and more issues like fatigue and things like that. And then her heart. And so around 2015, her health was just really starting to get bad. And
Mm,
I just remember thinking, I had gestational diabetes,
okay.
and when I was expecting my daughter back in the 80s in 84, and I was like, they say that if you have gestational diabetes, that you have a higher likelihood of becoming type 2 diabetic. And I was like, I mean, mama was diagnosed with it. My grandfather had it. I don't want it. So I'm going to see what I can do to prevent it.
Yeah, and your mom you said was thin. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like she was overweight and
Right.
became diabetic. I know there's a lot of maybe just a kind of like a preconceived idea that you're more at risk for diabetes if you're obese,
Yeah.
and
I don't
but you
think
can
that's
be
true.
skinny fat.
Yeah, and my grandfather was, oh gosh, like 6'4". I mean, he was very
Wow.
tall and lean, not skinny, but he was a lean person.
Yeah.
So he was not overweight at all. Now my grandmother was a little petite. It was funny seeing them together because like she was like 5 foot.
Oh, wow.
Tall, so it was kind of funny. But and she was plump. So on my grandmother's side, there was more, I guess, substance to the body, whereas
But she was not diabetic.
she wasn't that I know of.
No. Okay.
That I know of. So yeah, so that's a paradox within itself because it goes against what everybody thinks.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I in 2015, and I thought back too, and I was like, I had gestational diabetes, and they actually did recommend, by the way, they didn't call it a low carb diet, but they did tell me to avoid all the white foods.
Right. Right.
So, no potatoes, sugar, flour, bread, that kind of thing. Basically, meat and vegetables is what they told me to eat. And of course, they were wanting me to gain weight. So that was a whole nother thing. And so remember thinking to myself, how am I going to gain weight on, you know, meat and vegetables? I mean, even then, I knew that you couldn't gain weight on, or you know what I'm saying, that
Yeah.
wasn't typically what you would eat if you were supposed to put on pounds.
And you were really thin, right?
Yeah, yeah. I should have gotten the picture out, but I found a picture of me standing next to my uncle, and he's was really tall and skinny too. I mean, you could just see it in the family. It's my
Yeah.
mother's brother, and I was just, yeah. I mean,
And
I was just,
how tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
So you're taller than me. I'm 5'8".
Yeah, and so
So
I
you
weigh
are
now about
long and lean.
116. Yeah, I weigh about 116 now. I got down to
Wow.
110 and I have put on 6 pounds since I've been really concentrating on trying to eat more and
Yeah.
more
I don't
often. I can just like seriously, I can be working and like if I've got like water or something, I mean, I can just sit and just drink water and not eat and just
yeah,
work my way through lunch.
I don't think my skeleton weighs 116 pounds. But we're all body types, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
right. So yeah, so I was like, I don't want to end up like my mother because she had been, she was like you
Yeah.
said, she was slender, and it wasn't until she was diagnosed with diabetes and just got started on the medication and started going through that path that she started gaining weight, and then I just saw her health decline, and I was like, I don't want to end up that way. So I started researching, and of course, the first thing you find is vegetarian, lots of salads, lean meats, and all that. And I knew I was like, I can't go vegetarian. I wasn't going to
Okay,
even
so
go that route.
you never
No,
tried that route.
no, I never tried that. Now I did eat salads, and so I had cleaned up my diet a lot. And I just started doing more and more research though, and discovered low carb. I found like Dr. Michael Eads. He was one of them. And it wasn't on YouTube. It was actually through blogs. Like I just searched
Okay.
online and I wasn't really into YouTube at that point. So I found other blogs, and oddly enough, there was a guy, I can't tell you his name to save my life, but he was a carnivore. And I remember reading his stuff and just kind of being fascinated with it. I was like, man, I just don't know if I could eat all meat. So I just kind of discarded carnivore, but I did go low carb. And then from there, I worked my way down to what I now know is ketovore, because like salads and stuff started just like bothering my stomach. It just got to where I
Mhm.
couldn't eat them. It would like make me bloat and gassy and all that.
Yeah.
So it was just, I would just gradually through time just reduced my vegetable intake. And oh, I've just had my carniversary. It was either yesterday or today. I'm not really sure of the exact day, but my
Okay.
neighbor brought me these boxes of meat. He works for a food supply company. And so I had already been low carb and then keto, kind of worked my way down so it was 7 years, roughly 7 years since 2015. And so he brings me all this meat. Like he brought me Canadian bacon, um, regular bacon, bologna,
Nice.
burger patties and stuff. And so like I was cramming this stuff in my refrigerator, in my freezer and stuff. And I ended up having to give some to my daughter because I didn't have any place to put it. And so I was just eating. I mean, I had the boxes like shoved in the refrigerator. It was so funny. And I was eating off of all this meat, and that was just all I ate. And so then fast forward then about 3 or 4 weeks. And so I'm just kind of scrolling through YouTube because by then, I had been watching things on YouTube, and I saw, and I had always watched like low carb videos and stuff, but it was weird. Like I started seeing stuff about carnivore, and I don't know. It may have been Dr. Berry, but it could have been Sean Baker.
Hmm.
Um, a number of the ones I started watching them all around the same time, but it was funny because I was like, wow, carnivore. And I was like, well, I guess I'm a carnivore now because, I got to think, I was like, because, my initial reaction, I think most people's initial reaction would be, well, that's awful restrictive, or how
That's
can you eat only
yeah, or
meat?
that's crazy. Now Christy's here in the chat. When I interviewed her, she was kind of like her story reminded me of yours that she kind of like accidentally became a carnivore. And
Yeah, you just
that
kind of
sounds like that's
stumbled
kind of
into
what
it.
happened with you too.
I'm really grateful to my neighbor. And it's funny, and it's sad because he was telling me when he gave it to me, he says, yeah, he says, I can't eat this. My doctor says I can't have red meat and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like floored because I mean, that's all stuff that I would eat. I mean, I ate,
Yeah.
basically most of the time is bacon, eggs, beef anyway, but sometimes I would have like broccoli with cheese sauce steamed. I never ate it raw, like salads or anything like that. Or I would have cauliflower, same way, steamed with either maybe a cheese sauce or garlic butter and stuff like that on it. But yeah, not very many vegetables at all. But I was like grateful to him for bringing it, but I thought it was kind of sad because, he was, and I didn't want to like proselytize to him about, meat's not
Right.
bad or anything like that. So I
Right.
thanked him profusely for it. And then, as we would see each other outside and he would, and I would thank him again. I'd say, that's great. I said, that's all I eat now is meat. I finally just told him that. And he said, really? I said, well, yeah. I said, after you gave me all that meat, I said, I didn't want it to go to waste. So and I said, I feel better than I ever have. And so, I think he's added a little more meat to his diet, but he's still very cautious. And I
Yeah.
understand that because a lot of people, we've had that drilled into our heads, how bad it is,
Well,
supposedly.
right, right. We've been drilled that especially red meat is so bad for us, and and we know that it's not. And one
Hmm.
of the basis for that was really not good science. So, what sort of changes have you noticed in yourself since you started eating carnivore?
See, what's wild is I never thought that such a small amount of veg would make that much difference. I mean, I thought
Yeah,
I was eating extremely well, but from the time I was 20 years old, I've had anxiety. I had my first anxiety attack when I was 20. I was at work. My job, I mean, work was work. It's not like work was a vacation or a joy, but at the same time, it wasn't bad at all. I had a very good boss, and I was relatively happy there. I mean, I was doing office work, so it wasn't this terrible, horrible, grueling job or anything. But I don't know what happened, but I just had this panic attack.
so it was just out
And
of the blue.
yeah, and it was, I felt like I was losing control.
Mhm.
I felt like I was freaking out. Like if you hear somebody like maybe having a bad drug trip or something and they're just like freaking out,
Mm,
only I didn't do anything like that. But I mean, that was just, it just felt so disconcerting and just so, like, I mean, there was just no control or
right.
like I couldn't seem to just focus. It felt like I was just in limbo, sort of, and I couldn't catch my breath. It was very scary.
Was your heart pounding? And
Yep.
yeah,
And it was hard to
I had
breathe.
my first one in my 20s too, and it was kind of the same. It just seemed to hit out of nowhere. I wasn't even doing
Mhm.
anything stressful. I was at my aunt's house and we were watching an old movie together, and it hit. And yeah, I felt the same way. They're scary,
It
especially.
was extremely scary. I mean, yeah, it was terrible, and
So what
I
did you
had no
do?
clue as to what it was, and I didn't say anything to anybody. Let's see, this would have been like, let's see, this would have been like about 86. Yeah, 86 is when that would have been.
Mhm.
And so I didn't say anything to anybody. I just like sucked it up. But here's the weird thing, to an extent, I would say for a couple of weeks, I had this continuous panic attack. It's just that sometimes it was more extreme than others.
Yeah, so like
But
high
it was,
anxiety.
yeah,
Yeah,
for like
wow.
2 weeks. It was about 2 weeks. I don't know the exact number of days, but it was about that time period. And it was terrible. It was horrible. And I wondered if it was ever going to go away. And like I said, I had no clue as to what it was really. I just knew that this feeling just was there and it was always lurking. And sometimes it would just get really bad where I was like, where I almost couldn't catch my breath. And then other
Right.
times it was a little bit calmer, but it was just lurking. It was just still there.
Well, and
And it
there's
was
always
awful.
that impending doom feeling that,
Yes.
because you don't know when it's gonna hit. And I know for me, I was teaching high school at the time, and I would have them very often. I'd have them at the end of my day, and I'd have to leave class and go outside in the room and have a panic attack and then try to get myself together and come back inside. But yeah, now, did you ever have any panic attacks while you were sleeping?
I can't recall having them when I was sleeping
Yeah, I did for a little
specifically.
while. So do you think that it was diet related?
I do now, looking back, I think it
Mhm.
was. Um, it's really odd because I kind of look back and instinctively, like for example, no, I'm not going to say every time, but many times as a child, when I would have hamburgers, I would remove the buns and
Oh, so
just
you're a
eat the
natural
burger.
carnivore.
I'm also a natural intermittent faster because I would eat like
Oh, wow.
basically every other day. And
Wow.
and like I said, when I like even now, when I get involved in something, whether I'm drawing or whether it's work, I can just keep going through it and just I don't even think about eating. I remember my mother used to call me for dinner and I would just be annoyed,
Wow.
and I told her one time, I said, I wish they just had a pill that you could take for dinner because I just didn't want to stop to eat. It was just,
Wow. So when
and
you did
we didn't have snacks in the house either. So it's not
yeah,
like I
I
could
didn't
get,
either.
she did not buy that stuff. We did not have chips or, she didn't buy what we called sugary cereals.
Right.
So we did have like cornflakes, but she didn't buy anything like the sugar smacks or
Yeah.
Cocoa Puffs
My
or
parents
anything
didn't
like
either.
that.
So
Mm-mm.
what types of food did you eat growing up when you did eat?
Well, we did eat things like, I mean, Mama would fix sometimes. She would fix bacon and eggs and things, but we never had grits. But we did have cream of wheat.
Yeah.
Sometimes she would make oatmeal for breakfast. Um, then she would, for dinner or for supper, she would cook things like she might make meatloaf, and then we would have like mashed potatoes and
Mhm.
green beans and stuff like that. Now, oddly enough, when she started back to work when I was 16, and we had more meals out. Like her and daddy would just stop and grab
Okay.
something on the way home. A lot of times it just depended. He would pick her up on his way home from work, and then they would stop somewhere and get something. So we might have Kentucky Fried Chicken, or we might have this or that. And it wasn't every single night, but I mean, it definitely got more frequent in there since she was back to work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can understand her not feeling like cooking, because I still don't.
Yeah.
I am so lazy in the kitchen. It's not
Oh
even
man, I'd
funny.
have a hard time cooking for a kid that never wanted to eat.
Oh man, I mean, I'm just so lazy in the kitchen. So
I
I
am
just,
too. I am too. Anybody who follows my channel knows I'm a lazy cook. Like, I don't do a lot of cooking videos because it's
well, and
boring.
people love those, right? And so I mean, like basically my improvements are mostly just, I mean, I've had people tell me my skin looks really good. Um, my brother and other people, but my brother especially, because he knows me really well, has known that I've had this anxious personality most of my life, and actually he has suffered from anxiety too,
Mm.
and he has gone low carb. I think he's
Oh,
sliding toward
good.
carnivore, because it seems like he just keeps lessening his carbs.
Yeah.
So like a few months ago, I guess I'd been carnivore maybe 6 months, and he popped over to the house and he brought over a bag of what I affectionately call meat cookies, just burger patties from
Yeah.
Five Guys, for example. And he would get them other places too, but he would bring those, and we would just sit,
So he's
and
fully
he
on
had
board
he
and
had vegetables
supportive.
with his at that time, but I had just the patties.
You know, my
Yeah.
husband popped in here with his,
Hi, hubby.
he knows me.
It's not mine for sure, so you're in good company.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, hun. We all know
Yeah,
cooking
it's
is
like
not
that.
my spiritual gift.
It's like, thanks for your support, sweetie.
Yeah. You know what? He's not starving.
Oh, it's so funny. But
So you started carnivore in 2015. So you've been, is that right?
I started low carb in
Oh, okay.
2015,
Okay.
and then I just gradually worked like down to what you would call ketovore by the end of 2022.
Okay.
And so then I've been carnivore for right at a year. It was right after Christmas when he brought me that box of meat. And I don't remember whether it was like 26th, 27th,
Yeah.
28th, but it was right around this time last year when he brought all that meat.
So do you know, or do you recall, other than the big delivery of meat, what made you finally drop the remaining carbs that you were having?
Honestly, I just didn't go to the store, and I was just eating up what was in the refrigerator or what I already had. So
You
I
know,
didn't get any more vegetables. I didn't think about eating any, and I just ate on the meat.
so it wasn't
Now
just
that
like okay, as of this date, I'm going to be carnivore. You just
No,
kind of
it wasn't.
fell backwards into it.
I really did. I did
Yeah.
eat at that time not a lot of dairy, because I milk always bothered my stomach to an extent. So if I ever did get milk, it was acidophilus, but it was rare that I would get milk. But I did eat full fat Greek yogurt, and I've actually reintroduced it. I had
Okay.
gone dairy free for a while just to see if it made much of a difference. Now I still don't eat cheese. I ate, I think, a piece or two at a work function a few days ago, but it was like just a couple little cubes of cheese. It wasn't really, but it,
How'd
so
you
yeah,
do with
I'm
it?
not eating cheese. Um, so that's, yeah, I mean, pretty much I'm just basically all meat with full
Yeah.
fat Greek yogurt. I'll use that as kind of like it'll top off a meal
Kind of
or
like a
whatever.
sour cream substitute.
Hmm.
Yeah. So how's your anxiety?
Man, it's so much better. I mean, well, it's gone actually. I
That's
mean, it's
amazing.
like I haven't had a panic attack. Now, they did after I started low carb, the panic attacks lessened, and I would have one maybe every like 7 or 8 months or something. But even when I did, it wasn't very strong.
Okay.
But like I haven't had any since I've been carnivore. And the thing is,
Wow.
though, I have found that I'm calmer about life situations. Like
Yeah.
I could easily get worked up over just something that happened. I'm one of these people, I have to have a contingency plan. I plan things out. Well, parts of me are spontaneous, but parts of me are not, like certain things. And it's like if something just unexpected, like, oh, if your yard is full of water, where your water meter has a leak, or your toilet won't flush,
Right.
or which those are all
Sudden
things that
things.
I've had happen recently. Or when you have to find a place for your dad to live because his retirement community is no longer going to be serving that population. Just things like that
Yeah.
come up. I'm able to just reason through it. Or when critters eat the wires from under the hood of your car. Yes,
That
that
has never
happened too.
happened to me.
Happened to me. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. Comprehensive car insurance covered it, but here's the thing, though. I reasoned through like just all of it, and I contacted, I did research or looked online, and I saw where some people said, oh, your comprehensive insurance might cover that, check and see, like in forums and stuff, people will be asking questions and stuff. And so I've learned a lot about it, that apparently the wires are made out of soy, some kind of a soy derivative, and that there are certain
Okay.
critters that find it pleasant to eat, that it tastes good to them. And so that's why the critters like to munch on the wiring. And boy, they ate up my
Interesting.
wiring harness. They ate a bunch of $5,300 worth of stuff they ate up under there.
What?
I'm not
Why
kidding.
would they make something out of soy?
Well, I
Is it
imagine that they wanted it to be maybe sort of biodegradable or
biodegradable?
something, and
But
in other words, more environmentally friendly is a theory that I saw online. I am not sure,
interesting.
because the wiring didn't used to be made out of that,
Things that they do now that doesn't make any sense.
right? Right.
Yeah, my goodness. So, well, I know that for any of you who have dealt with anxiety and panic attacks, you know that like I kind of see it as there's two different things. There's the panic attack, which is kind of like these periodic, episodic, really intense, moments. But then
Waves, it's
there's
these
your
waves that would
yes,
just come over you, that would just, and you couldn't breathe, and you couldn't
yes, the really
catch
intense.
your,
If you've
yeah.
had one, you know it. But then there's also like kind of a baseline level of anxiety. It
Mhm.
sounds to me like both have improved for you. That
Both
your
are
base
gone.
Yeah, that your baseline level of anxiety is down to zero, and zero panic attacks. Because
Mhm.
that's actually really significant, because some people will be able to maybe like get the panic attacks at bay, but they still have this kind of baseline anxiety that they're dealing with. And that's not good for you either, because that's, I mean, it'd be hard. I mean, for those of us trying to lose weight, it's kind of hard to lose weight when you constantly have that cortisol stimulus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So with your preventing diabetes, um, it sounds like you definitely are doing that. Do you go and see the doctor and get labs?
I actually had labs in September.
Okay.
For the first time ever, I had my fasting insulin checked, and it was
Oh,
3.8.
okay.
So it was, so you don't want it to be zero for obvious reasons, but you
Right.
certainly, Dr. Berry says, less, I think it's like less than 5 and greater than like 2 or something like that is optimal, in his Common Sense Labs book. I think it's something like that. I know it's less
Yeah.
than
Somewhere
5. I can't
between two
remember
and
the
five.
greater thing. Yeah.
So yours is
So
good.
I was very pleased with that. So yeah, no signs of diabetes.
Now, did you have to ask for the insulin levels to be
Yes.
checked? Okay, because I've never seen a doctor actually voluntarily test that unless it's a naturopathic doctor.
Yeah. No, I had to ask for it, and he was cool about it. He was just like, okay, he
One more
ordered
test.
it. Yeah, he was fine with it, and I asked for my vitamin D level because,
Good.
I had been supplementing for quite a while, and I was just curious. And actually, mine is at 125, so I've got to ease up a little bit on my
125. How much
yeah,
vitamin
which
D were you taking?
10,000 IU's a day. But
Okay.
I think that's one reason why I was so healthy, though, because like I took care of my dad that whole time he had COVID and never got it. I never got it until recently.
Yeah.
And although I was very sick for about 4 days, I got better very fast. I
Yeah.
mean, it was like less than a week from the time that I was like dog sick to I was going to a Kiss concert. It was so funny. Um, my son had gotten us his seats from his company, the box that they have at the arena, and he surprised me with the tickets. And right after I found out about that, then I ended up getting COVID. And so when I finally made it to the doctor's office, which the first day I didn't get out of bed,
Yeah.
was laying there in agony. But the second day I went and I just asked the doctor, I was like, please tell me I'll be able to go to the Kiss concert. He's like, yeah, he says, you'll be beyond the 5 days. He said, if you feel up to going, you can go. And I mean, I was raring to go. And that was
Well,
less than a
vitamin
week.
D, it's like if your immune system is an orchestra, vitamin D is the conductor. And that's the analogy that I've heard. The vitamin D
Mm-hmm.
levels are like the conductor of your orchestra that keeps it all working and doing what it's supposed to do in the right timing. And so the fact you had such high vitamin D levels makes sense.
Yeah.
I got my vitamin D levels up higher than they are now, but to adequate levels. And then when I had COVID, it was like a no brainer. It was like didn't even go to bed. Like literally, I was
Yeah.
taking care of my daughter and my husband who both had it too, and I had amazing energy, and it just stayed in my nose. Of course, I was doing
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of other stuff too, all those therapies that the mainstream news censored. So
Right.
yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, it didn't get the jab, So I was just
Right.
my
Right.
own immune system, you know, relying on my own immune system. So
And so now apparently I won't get it for, well, and of course there'll be a new strain of it, I guess. But so a part of me has kind of like been hesitant to reduce my vitamin D intake.
yeah, probably get it
Um,
under 100.
yeah, Dr. Berry
Yeah,
says 100 is good. Somewhere between what, like 70 and 100 is
yeah.
like,
Yeah,
um,
I've heard different things. I've heard 50 to 100. I've heard 80 to 100, but I think that definitely 100 is always the upper limit that I hear. So
yeah, yeah.
125, that's pretty good. I've got to get mine retested because mine got to below 40, and my naturopathic doctor was not happy. So
Oh, yeah,
yeah, so I'm currently taking higher doses of vitamin D right now. So I got to get it rechecked. I don't want it to get too high. So that's good. So the anxiety's gone. Now you had mentioned I saw a video that you did a while back about your improvement with your blood pressure. It sounds like
oh
you
my
were at least
God.
having. And when I watched your video, the first thought was, well, because it sounded like your blood pressure was normal when you checked it at home, but it was more white coat syndrome when you did get it checked at the hospital. So it sounded like, you had your first time you went to the doctor and you actually had a
Hmm.
normal reading at the doctor. That to me sounds
Yes.
like it was an improvement in your anxiety.
That. Here's the thing. I started feeling the improvement in the anxiety before that actually happened. Uh, if that makes sense. So like
Yeah.
when because let's see, I'm thinking March. I had gone to the doctor in March of last year, and I know it was still like it wasn't like alarmingly high. It was never that,
Hmm.
but it was higher than they like. Like they won't always say, we need to keep an eye on that, or they'll take it again just to see if they can get a lower reading. Like a lot of times they would take it,
Yeah.
two or couple more times after the initial test just to,
Yeah. Just in
you
case
know,
it is white coat
mhm,
syndrome. Yeah.
yeah. And in general, it's been very, what is it? Like maybe like somewhere in the 130s, over like 85 or 90, maybe, so not anything like just awful, but
Yeah.
yet
Not
at the same
alarming.
time, yeah, they're like, yeah, we'll need to monitor your blood pressure, make sure that And actually, it had been a little worse about, I'm thinking it was around the time I went low carb. I'll have to look at that because I've actually been seeing the same doctor for like 25 years. And so all my records are online. So, I mean, the whole history is in there. So I'm
Yeah.
going to have to check, but I know my blood pressure was worse because they wanted me to wear a monitor, for a blood pressure monitor that was like kind of like a continuous glucose monitor, only it was for your blood pressure.
Yeah.
And that's how we discovered then that although it always tended to be higher, it wasn't that it was white coat syndrome if it was at the doctor's office, but it was higher normally. How am I supposed to say, how am I trying to say this? It was higher, but it was like never this low at home, I guess, until Carnivore, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So
Yeah.
like I just
So
had
your
it.
so your baseline blood pressure wasn't as high as it was at the doctor, but after Carnivore it lowered.
Yes, it got even
Mhm.
lower. So
Nice.
like my baseline is like 110 to like, what was it? I just went for a follow up and it was like 110 over 71 or something. So it was just
That's
like,
great.
I was just like,
So
wow,
Susan said
first
she's having
try.
nuclear stress tests. She said her blood pressure was 124 over 74 at cardiologist appointment. He says prehypertensive.
What?
Okay, no, I'm sorry. It's probably because it was over 120, but honestly, the diastolic being 74, I can't see how anybody would call you pre-hypertensive because usually hypertension is based on the diastolic mostly. Between above 90 is where you get into kind of the pre-hypertensive realm.
Mm-hmm.
Some doctors are so stuck on the 120 over 80, and if either of them go above that, you know, they they think that there's something wrong. But you mean our blood pressure goes up and down all the time. So
That's true too. And here's something else. I thought I heard on, I think it was, well, I'm pretty sure it was Dr. Berry, but I don't know the I don't know exactly when it was, but very recently though, that they had changed the guideline. Like they've backed it up because it used to be, I think it was your age plus 100 for the top number. And that they, back, I'm talking like in the 80s that it
yeah,
was. And then they gradually just started lowering.
lowering it.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking that now they want everybody to be under 120. So
I
like if you're at 120 now for your top number, that's one of that they consider, like if it's, so in other words, what used to be considered normal, like 120 over 80 would be like the ideal. Now if you're at 120, that's
I just
borderline.
wonder how much influence the pharmaceutical industry has on that because they want to sell heart, medications for hypertension. Just like everyone with the statins, trying to throw statins at everybody. I was watching, it wasn't a carnivore broadcast podcast or something. I was watching a podcast of somebody, I forget the other day, but they mentioned like, oh, everybody over a certain age they're on a statin as if that was just a given. Like,
Yeah,
and there was like nothing to be concerned about there. It was just like, oh, well, we happen to know that everybody over this age in America is on a statin. And yeah, so I don't know,
well, they
maybe they
put my mother on one, and I will tell you this, because that's diabetic protocol. I mean, boy, once you're diabetic, they want to put you on a slew of stuff,
well,
and
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 statins can
statins
cause
was one.
diabetes, so
Exactly. And here's the thing, my dad called me and he says, I think something's wrong with mama. And I was like, well, what is it? What's going on? And he said, well, she can't remember how to check her blood sugar. And I mean, this is something she had been doing for like years,
Yeah,
at
probably the
15
statin.
years at this point. And I was like, and so my first thought was, I said, well, Daddy, has there been a change in medication?
Yeah, good for you for asking.
And he said, well, I don't think so. And I said, well, can you look in the cabinet and get her medicine bottles and tell me what they are? And so he did, and one of them was a generic form of a statin. And I said, and I mean, I probably shouldn't have, but it infuriated me. It made me so mad. But I just said, tell her to stop taking those right now and not to take them again.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure enough, a few days later, she was fine.
Her
And,
brain was
it was
cleared up.
yeah, a
Yeah.
little over a week later, and she was like back to normal and stuff. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah, we wonder why there's so much Alzheimer's and dementia. I know that there's been a link with statins and cognitive function. So that's pretty crazy that, yeah, it was so obvious with your mom. Now,
hmm
has your mom been watching you as far as being on the carnivore diet, and has she been kind of looking to see if maybe this is something that she might try?
She passed away in 21 when
Oh,
she
she
was in the
did.
hospital. Yeah, she was in the hospital. It was odd. My dad, actually, I took him to the emergency room, um, and she was upstairs in the hospital. So she had congestive heart failure. And so she was in the hospital. She had collapsed at
Hmm.
their apartment. And so they had taken her to the ER. And she was awake and conscious, um, but she was very weak and everything. And I didn't get to see her. Um,
Hmm.
my dad ended up having that virus. And so, but it's the weird rules. But basically, what happened was, since he was the one who brought her to the hospital, he was like the person. So they wouldn't let anybody else in the room with her or anything. And so, even though he ended up being sick and I wanted to then be the one to be in the room with her, they wouldn't let me. So I didn't get to see her before she
So
passed.
was anybody with her when she died?
No.
That
I
is,
mean, hospital staff, I think, was,
I need to keep
I
my
mean,
mouth
I'm not
shut because
sure.
I can have a million words to say about that.
But yeah, no family, nobody from family. So then, of course, dealing with my father being so sick
All
and
right. This
you
is
know,
what I need to say. That comment
yeah,
says it
that right
all.
there.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I had my aunt who was the only remaining of the elders. My parents had already passed. This was my mom's sister. She was like a second mom to me. She died alone too. And it's just heartbreaking, especially when you have, like, I know with her, my sister and I had years ago promised her we would not let her die alone,
Yeah.
and we couldn't keep that promise. Neither of us were able to be there with her.
It's
So,
heartbreaking. It really is. And like, I don't know. I just really am angry that because here's the thing, like I had just talked with one of the advocates there at the hospital, and we were talking about setting up um, care from a mother, for her to be discharged and then have some in-home care. And so we were making cleaning and moving stuff around and everything in the apartment. And of course, then that was when my dad we realized my dad was sick, and, because he was just laying in bed, which is not something that he normally would do. He was always very active and stuff. And he just kept saying, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. But anyway, I just talked with the liaison there, and it was like maybe 10 minutes later, I get a phone, and she sounded so dumbfounded. She says, "Is this Carrie?" And I was like, "Yes." And she said, "This is so and so from such an hospital. We just spoke." And I said, "Oh, yes." And she said, "I am so sorry to call you and tell you this." She said, "But your mother just passed away." And I was like, and but she said she was sitting up and she was getting ready to eat her breakfast. They were getting ready to bring her breakfast in the room, and she was looking forward to her breakfast and talking with the nurse, and she just went.
wow. Well, it
So
was
I'm,
peaceful. It was
so
peaceful. So that was
yeah,
good.
but
Wow,
but
interesting.
I wasn't there.
You
She
weren't
was
there.
awake, and I didn't get to, at least I don't know. I didn't even get to speak with her or just anything. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just that there's so many people that are in this situation that had to, you know, miss being there for their loved ones when they died. And, I hope that what happened over the past few years has opened up a lot of people's eyes to the problems with guidelines and healthcare. And there's so many people, and I guess I'm fortunate because, like, my older brother forever has been a major conspiracy theorist. And he's always sharing stuff with me. And so I research. I don't want to assume anything. So I research everything he sends me. And some of it I put aside and say, I don't feel there's enough evidence to this. And other things I'm like, yeah, I agree. But my eyes were open many, many years ago, like probably 20 years ago or more, to the corruption and the greed and our government and industry. And I just hope that there's a lot of people that over the past few years have had their eye-opening experience.
Hmm.
That this actually opened up their eyes to the corruption and the greed, because it is. I just feel like these people who are behind the scenes making all these guidelines and rules, they don't care about us. I've heard people say they hate us. And I wonder sometimes because
It does make you wonder.
mhm,
And I think some of it was the perfect storm, like the guidelines, and for the food companies, for example, they just were kind of doing what the government said in terms of making food that met the criteria.
right,
So they were so it just all kind of fell into place together. I don't know that initially there was any malicious intent, but then at the same time, like as time has gone on, it's almost like maintaining this sick population. Like, so
right,
you get sick from the food, and
right,
then you need this medicine. And so you're sick enough to where you don't die, but you're not having a life.
right. Like, and I agree. I don't think that necessarily originally the intent was to hurt us. It was following these guidelines that were based on
Hmm.
bad science.
Yep.
And but so maybe you give them a little bit of a pass for the beginning,
Right.
but at some point they've got to look and see how unhealthy we've become, and start to reevaluate. But the profits are there. They're making so much profit on these products that they're producing that we're eating.
Yeah. And I think like the general staff or people working, it's just kind of like the general public. It's like you just believe what you've been told. And until you really discover different, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think most of the people who work for the places and everything, they probably don't think anything bad of it because they just don't know any better and they haven't
Right.
learned any better. And the government's not going to, nobody is going to say, oh, sorry, we messed up. They
No
might,
one's going to say that. No,
no, they
because
might slowly, incrementally, possibly, maybe each 5 years might slightly back up on something. And then when enough people of the
maybe.
old guard die, then maybe, like in 100 years, it might be different or it might be too late. I don't know.
Well,
I like to
it's
be a little more
amazing.
optimistic, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're ever going to admit, oops.
no, they won't. But
Oh,
they won't hold a
sorry.
press conference and just say, "Yeah, we're sorry. We it started in with good intentions." And I mean, if you've got these various health organizations telling people that diabetics should eat carbohydrates, and I mean here's the problem. My grandfather maintained his diabetes with diet. My grandmother knew what to cook for
Mm,
him.
okay.
So it was diet. I mean, back then when he was diagnosed, which I guess, gosh, would have been in the 1960s, that was all they had pretty much was diet. And so she
Right.
just knew what to cook for him. Well, you fast forward then to when my mother was diagnosed, and that was at the point because even in the 80s, the early, well, it was 84 when I had gestational diabetes, and they gave me the little pamphlet that told me, don't eat the breads and the sugars and this, eat, salad. They had the little chicken, just pictures of the food and that you could eat and stuff. And, they had like the X with the bread and X with the
Right.
sugar and all this. So even this was in the 80s, but by the time, in early 2000s, like I said, I think it was 2001, already it was basically, oh, just whatever carbs you have, there was counting carbs, but it wasn't counting carbs for the way we would count carbs. It was counting carbs so you would know how much insulin
Yeah.
to
Right.
to
Right.
take.
Because of this. Yeah.
So they presented it as you can eat what you want.
And I don't have to
And,
count carbs because it's always zero.
and, and so here's the insulin constantly, and it just she fell into I mean, I can just see it now very clearly. I mean, I knew it was wrong way before now,
Yeah.
but now, especially like after Dr. Fung's book, for example, and
Yes.
just lots of other reading and research I've done since then, I just know now. I'm like, yeah, because the more carbs you eat, then you take the insulin, and it just built up on itself, and she just had so much insulin, and it just totally messed up her heart and everything else. I
Well,
mean,
I was thinking about that because we're learning so much in the Dr. Fung's book. If you had known that, 20 years ago, do
mhm.
you think your mom would have read the book and, and maybe learned
you
from
know,
that?
she might have. My mother was always kind of a rebel. Like she would like explore ideas about, like things that people might think of as conspiracy theories,
Mhm.
which a lot of these things ended up coming true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just because they're labeled a conspiracy theory doesn't mean that there's no facts. That's not factual. It's just,
Right.
I think it's easy to label something as a conspiracy theory because it makes everybody out to be nut jobs.
But at the same time, it's like I believe she would have read the book at that point and perhaps had, she may have followed the instructions or the like she would have looked at that and said, oh, well, this makes sense. And I'm going to totally do the opposite of what they're telling me. And I think I get some of that from her because it's like, just because you say something, not you personally, but I mean, just
Yeah.
because somebody tells me something, no matter who it is, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to do it or that it's the right thing to do. I'm going to look into it and I'm going to
Yeah.
see so there's enough of that in me. But here's the problem. I think for so many years she had done what she I'm not gonna say done what she wanted, but I mean, she thought it was okay to eat what she wanted and take the insulin and
Right.
just, there was
Probably
more
because that's
medication.
what she was told.
And
Mhm.
she was proud of herself for being compliant. Like she always checked her sugar. She always did all this. And I just remember like I would see her give herself shots. I'm just like, oh hell no, I'm not doing that.
Oh, yeah.
I'll eat dog doo doo almost before I'll sit there and give myself a shot. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just, just about to that point. But here's the thing, she was in the hospital in 2019 and I was in the hospital with her for 3 weeks. I spent one night in my own bed. The rest of the time I was in the hospital staying with her the whole time. And I snatched up that clipboard and I put what she was going to eat from the menu. They gave you a
Yeah.
choice of what you could have, and I monitored. I mean, I just flat out told her this is what you're eating, and the nurses would always come in and they would check her blood sugar and everything, and like her insulin was reduced way down. She was on two different types of insulin, one long acting and one short acting.
Yeah.
And like her insulin dosages were way down and everything. And she saw, now my dad actually saw this and he eats lower carb. I mean, he still
Yeah.
eats bread and stuff on occasion, but he really has done a lot better in terms of what he eats.
Well,
But
it's interesting because
since
I know
then,
in the hospitals, I mean, I know they have diabetic menu for the people with diabetes, but it includes desserts. And there's artificial, or there's like
Yep.
sucralose, there's the things in, I mean, from our last book club session, we know we talked about artificial sweeteners and
Hmm.
how was it
Yeah, she didn't eat any
Splenda?
desserts. I didn't let her eat the
Yeah,
desserts
but a
and
lot of diabetics
fruit.
do. They get it, and that they've been and Splenda. What we learned was spikes your insulin level even higher than glucose.
Yep.
So,
Even though your like your blood sugar level stays low, which was supposedly the big selling point. Oh, it doesn't spike your blood sugar, but behind the scenes, your insulin's going, zoom,
oh, our
zoom,
book
zoom,
club is here. Kim's here.
Ah,
We
fabulous.
we got the whole
Hey,
book
Nurse
club here.
Kim, book
It
club
just
Betty.
comes on and we're talking about the book. So, but yeah, it's like there's so much that could be learned, and I kind of suspected that the artificial sweeteners and even the ones that are considered plant-based, like stevia, were probably not good for us.
Well, sugar's plant-based.
Yeah, sugar's plant-based. Yeah, I mean,
I
so is
mean,
arsenic, right?
that logic doesn't always.
No, no. Kim just got off work.
Hmm.
So let's see. So Susan says, when I had my knees replaced, the dietitian in the hospital said I wasn't eating enough carbs. And when I ordered my meals, they kept pushing carbs on me. And honestly, for surgery recovery, fat was the better choice,
Yep.
because fat is what you need for healing. Yeah, Kim says heroin is plant-based. Yes,
Well, yeah,
exactly.
that's a valid point. So
Yeah,
yeah, but I did like for breakfast. I picked bacon and eggs for my mom,
good.
and she did. I did let her. I hate to say I let her, but I mean I just took over because I was like, this is ridiculous. She doesn't need to be eating this stuff. And since she was in the hospital, and I mean it was either they were going to tell her what to eat or I was.
Yeah. Or
Because
they
if
let
I would
her
just let
choose.
them, yeah, if I would have just let them pick, I mean, it would have been garbage. So I picked, and
Yeah.
they were all. The nurse was like, "Oh well, she only needs this much," and they were just impressed that she didn't need that much insulin, and the
Yeah.
nurse, the staff there was great. They really were. They were fabulous staff, and they um, I have to say that, I mean, I don't fault the staff because I'm sure that it's like anything else. You have to
Right.
do what they say.
Well, and I mean, and in the hospital, your job is to get them stable so they can go
Mhm.
home. It's not
Yeah,
to manage their chronic illnesses.
right.
You do what the doctor prescribes, and
Yeah.
you try to get them well enough. So Kim said her diabetic father-in-law was just in the hospital for urinary sepsis, was eating a brownie when I arrived. Oh my goodness. Okay. And including
Yeah.
sepsis. So bacteria love sugar, right?
Yep.
You'd think that even if there was no diabetes involved, that just having sepsis alone or any infection, they would be saying no sugar. It's like, yeah, unbelievable. But, wow. I want to go to your channel, and let me go pull it up here. So I'm going to be kind of looking away for a bit here. You won't tell, but I can tell. Let's see. Let me go to my subscriptions because I am subscribed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm
Yep.
subscribed to you too.
Yep. And let me just. I can see I can see us on video on your channel. Here we go. Nope, that's it. It auto corrected me. Meat. Oh, no wonder. Meat. Sorry, I'm spelling it wrong.
Yeah, there's a story behind how that happened because I was trying to come up with like a name, and it was funny. I had written like something like ketomorphosis and stuff. And then I was meditating and the term metamorphosis came up, but for whatever reason, I
Oh,
accidentally typed an O when instead of, so it was meat O. And then by the time I really noticed that there was an O there, I was like, well, I actually like the O better.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it was sort of an accident, but I like the O better than the A being there.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yep.
it's good. All right, so this is, I'm sure everybody on here in the chat is already subscribed, but if you're not, subscribe to Carrie's channel. All righty. So let's see what we have here, lady. Anxiety and panic attacks. You did a video on that. Blood pressure. You do some meal prep, so that's good. I watched your video about trying the bacon for the first time, the beef bacon.
Oh, it's fantastic, and I just had some today.
So you have now, see, but you mentioned it does have carbs in it. How many carbs does it
It
have?
has a 1 carb per slice,
Oh,
roughly.
okay. So it's not a lot.
That's not terrible.
Yeah.
It's just that when you look at regular bacon, there's like it's not noticeable. Like it's zero, basically zero
Yeah.
carbs in a piece of bacon. If you just look at regular bacon, now I'm not talking about flavored bacons either.
So how was the flavor of the beef bacon compared to a pork bacon?
It's a little bit thick. It's a thicker taste to me.
Okay.
A kind of a more robust taste than bacon. But of course, I
Okay.
love bacon. But it's delicious though. It is the beef bacon is so good.
I'll have to try it. So I saw watch this video you did look into for meat and metal. Um, and it was I was laughing. I was laughing because it was like you could not find a metal
Mm-mm.
band or musician that was eating a carnivore diet, but yet you were finding all these that were vegetarians.
Well, here's what was funny about that. I wasn't even searching I didn't search for carnivore. Well, actually, the first time I did search for carnivore, but that's not on the video. But there was a band called Carnivore that kind of threw the results off
Yeah.
because it was just suggesting the band. So I said, metal musicians who eat meat.
Okay.
And the results I got were Rob Zombie says veganism is cool. Like, or veganism is metal. And I'm like, what? And so I start thumbing through and like Kirk Hammett and all these different people, for like Metallica
Yeah.
talking about being vegans and like 15 vegan metal musicians and just like all these different. And I'm like, but there was nothing in the results at all about any metal musicians who eat meat. Like it was all so
Yeah.
and so is vegan, so and so is vegan in all the results.
And
That's the
your point
results
was
I got.
really interesting because it's true because the metal and the rockers and stuff, they're supposed to be rebels, right? And they're supposed
Mm-hmm.
to question their they question the narrative, right? And they push back. And it's weird to see metal musicians falling in line,
Yeah,
you know.
just towing along with the. I mean, I guess Ted Nugent's more of a hard rocker, but I mean, I know that man eats meat. But I guess they wouldn't classify him as metal necessarily. But good Lord,
Yeah.
if you can substitute the word vegan for the word meat, then I mean, because like I said, I was searching for metal musicians who eat meat. So
Right.
I would rather see something that says no results found than for me to get this vegan propaganda
Right. Right. Because
pushed
you
at
didn't
me.
put vegan or vegetarian in the
Mm-mm.
search criteria at all.
Nope.
And yet it pulled up. Yeah.
It was
Interesting.
crazy. And
Interesting.
then the thing about the food groups. I don't know if you saw that video, but I was actually doing research for something or reading up on another subject because it wasn't Bart K has a problem with lay people using the term research, and I understand what he means. But I was reading up on some other subject matters and
Funny.
stumbled upon the fact that there is no longer a meat group. You know how there used to be your bread,
Yep.
cereals, then you had your dairy and your vegetables and okay, well there's not a meat group anymore.
There isn't. I
It's
didn't see that video.
called no, yeah, it's
Is it
called
called protein?
yes, it is. And beans and soy are included in it.
You know what? Actually, I did watch that video. Yeah. So, yeah, because it used to be, I mean, when I was growing up, the 4 food
Hmm.
groups was how my mom made our
Yep.
meals. She was always making sure we had something from the 4 food groups, and yes, one of them was meat, so we always had some meat, and, but we had tiny little portions. So, Mike says that Bart K is wrong, you were doing research.
Yeah,
You
I
just
think
weren't doing a clinical trial.
yes, exactly. I mean, I said that tongue in cheek because I understand why he says that because some of what some people say is research is not. So
Well,
I think that
there's a
word
lot of
gets
people who are
tossed around.
doing clinical trials wrong.
Hmm.
So I think we need to have, if we're going to really get technical on defining research,
Yeah.
there's a lot of this stuff out there that's published that can be thrown out, you know. So how did you end up getting into metal? Have you been into metal since you were a kid?
Since I was a teenager, I mean, I was
Yeah.
introduced to Kiss when I was 11. My friend Tanya and I stole her older brother's record albums. So I was introduced to bands like Bad Company, Nazareth, Alice Cooper, and Kiss. And for whatever reason, I just took to Kiss. And
Yeah.
so I've been a fan since I was about 11. And then in high school, well, I dated this one guy that, I mean, he was like just so into metal and hard rock too. We both were. And so we hit up every concert that came to town. I mean,
Wow.
you name it, I saw it.
So what was your first concert?
Kiss.
Kiss
August
what?
14th. Yes, August 14th, 1979 at the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow. Wow. I, you know,
Yep.
I was, I actually like metal. I mean, we've talked about this in our book club. You and Kim and I all like metal,
Yeah.
which was kind of funny to learn because, I mean, to me, of the three of us, you're the one that wears the metal t-shirts and stuff. And Kim and I don't look like metalheads at all. But not that there's a stereotype, but there kind of is, right?
Yeah,
You know,
there is.
yeah. I mean, you kind of anticipate, but I I love classical music. And like I even have a lot of times I'll have a classical station on in my car, and
Hmm.
I've always been really moved like by music. And I learned, like, my husband and I went years ago to a Piano Guys concert. I don't know if you're familiar with the Piano Guys. They've got a massive YouTube channel, but one of the guys plays the cello beautifully. And we went to one of
Oh,
their
wow.
concerts, and there was a cello solo, and I didn't even realize it, but I had tears streaming down my face. I think I'm one of those like empaths when it comes to music. And
Hmm.
I I've come to love like power and symphonic metal. Like I'm not into
Oh, I do
the death,
too. Yeah.
like the death metal and the really hard like crazy stuff, but I really love power and symphonic metal. And I've been listening to a lot of it. In fact, my friends, like all my friends that I've known since high school, they're like, "When did you become a metalhead?" Because I'm sending them these music videos and stuff. They're like, "I don't understand." You
Well, you
know,
know that solo that cello solo that you were talking about that the person played, Mannheim Steamrollers, "What Child Is This?" or
Mm,
Greensleeves does that to me. And I remember my son, I mean, I would always, it's Christmas around here when I get out the Mannheim Steamroller. And of course
yeah,
I stream it now, but
and I like Trans Siberian Orchestra.
yes,
We
I
went
like
to a
them too.
concert of theirs, but
Yeah, and my son, I remember he was maybe 5, and, I had Mannheim Steamroller playing, and that song came on, and I was just bawling, and, Hunter was like, "Why do you play that song if it makes you cry?" And I said, "It's so
yeah,
beautiful."
it is. Did did you
It is.
listen to the video I sent with the Christmas song on
The
our
one the
kids?
metal part, what is it? The one that said metal, band plays, yes, I did, but I can't, what was the song?
Angels
I've
We
seen
Have
that
Heard on
one.
High.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know if any of you guys listening know. Now Dan Vasc is an independent artist and he's from Brazil, and I absolutely love him. I love his music. His voice is incredible. And he can sing some of the grungiest metal out there. Like this
Mhm.
guy can growl, he can scream, and he performed a beautiful version of Angels We Have Heard on High that I sent to our book
Yeah.
club group. And but it did have some metal. It had the guitars kicked in and he got up
Mhm.
there into the heavens, but he can sing opera. He's classically trained. So I've been watching, some of his stuff. And if you ever get a chance to watch him, he's pretty incredible. He's going on 1 million subscribers, and he's pretty amazing. But
Rob
yeah.
Halford released, Rob Halford, lead singer of Judas Priest, has a couple of Christmas albums.
Oh,
He sure does, and you can find the videos on YouTube. And Rob Halford, I mean, obviously he's in his 70s now, so I mean he's getting up there, but his voice is still fabulous. Now,
wow.
in his youth, I mean, nobody could beat him, I don't think. I
Yeah.
mean, there were Bruce Dickinson, possibly, I mean, I love Bruce Dickinson too. So Ronnie James Dio. But I mean, Rob Halford was like, I mean, they call him the metal god for a reason.
Yeah.
And especially, oh man, in his youth, if you ever get a chance to see the 1983 US Festival concert of Judas Priest, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
It is, I've actually got the DVD of it. I finally found one, but it is, and so I can, well,
Look at
but
this.
man,
We've
it's
got a lot of
fabulous.
musicians. Look at that. We got a lot of musicians in there. Boogie is more my style. Susan, I'm a country Christian and contemporary Christian music fan now. That's what I grew up on, honestly. Like not really country. My daughter loves country. Um, but my youngest daughter, who's 27, she loves like Southern gospel, like the Gaithers. She
Mm-hmm.
loves Southern gospel, and we quite a few years back went to this thing called a Southern gospel picnic that was in Branson, Missouri, and it was like a whole week of. It was at this theme park, and it was a whole week of going to all these like gospel quartets and
Mm-hmm.
amazing music. But when I was growing up, I grew up in the church, and my parents didn't let me listen to the radio. And back then it was radio. It was like 70s and 80s. There was nothing online. But my very first concert was actually Amy Grant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
My
that was.
parents, see, my dad, of course, came to Nashville for music. And my mother came for music, but not to perform it. She just loved it so much that she moved down here just to be in that environment. And so my dad, when I was little, well, and up into my early teens, played in a band called the Charity Singers. And it was a gospel country band. And we traveled to churches all throughout the South. And the different churches would take up like love offerings to cover the gas and stuff. They called them love offerings, but they would have these dinners on the ground, and so everybody would like back up their pickup trucks or their cars or whatever, and then the kids would have sleeping bags in the back and stuff, and then they'd have a tent set up and they'd just go on all night. It was dinner on the ground, best food you ever had in your life. And I mean, I'm
Oh, that
not
sounds fun.
necessarily a foodie, but man, I have very fond memories of that. And
Yeah.
so but here's the part where my mother's a rebel though, because we had a lot of friends, or my family had friends who were religiously strict.
Yeah.
And they said that KISS, the name stood for Knights in Satan's Service, and
I heard that
that it
too.
was
That's what I
that it
grew up
was
hearing.
evil and stuff. And
Yeah.
my mother was a contrarian. And she was like, that she didn't believe it, and that she didn't think that the music would poorly influence me. And so I got to listen to them and hang up the posters and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And she didn't. And here's the thing too, though. I mean, I kept up my grades. I mean, I was well, I'm not going to say a straight A student, but I mean, I was an extremely good student,
Yeah.
and graduated like in the top 10% of my class in high school, for example. So I I'm not going to say I was a little angel, but at the same time, I mean, I could have been into so much worse.
Yeah. Well,
And
my
yeah.
I was the same, my parents were, they believe that anything, yeah, honestly, it was like if there were drums, like my grandmother was really, really, really conservative, like to the point where she wouldn't play cards, and she wouldn't go to the movies, and was like so conservative. And then with my mom, it was like music, really, even drums were kind of evil. And so there was this metamorphosis, and I always loved music.
Hmm.
And so I would kind of sneak the radio, and one of my best friends, we would listen to the radio together over the phone. So we both have the same station on. And then the phones had, it was a rotary dial phone, and it had a big old long cord. And so the
Yep.
cord would reach, it was the phone in my parents' bedroom. It would reach into my bedroom and under the door, and I'd be on the phone with my friend, and we'd be listening to the radio together, like rock music and stuff. And we even had, the radio thing had a cassette player in it, and so we would
Uh-huh.
like be like, oh, be quiet, we want to record this one. Right.
Oh man, I used to do that. I used to record stuff. Oh yeah, because I mean, who could afford all that? I mean, really? I mean, back
Yeah.
then it was like a big deal. Like I would have to save up money, like for weeks. Like if an album was coming out that I knew that I was going to want, or I would have to ask for it for like a birthday or Christmas. But it was so funny because, yeah, my mother, she was like, that's just so narrow minded. I'm not going to tell her she can't listen to that. She, like I said, she was a contrarian in many ways, and I've
Yeah.
inherited some of those
She kind of
qualities from
inherited
her.
that.
But
Yeah.
it's just weird about the whole diabetes thing but I think because it was,
She
and
went along.
here's another thing that kind of occurred to me. Maybe that because it's health related, she wanted to take her health seriously, and since
Right.
that was what they told her,
Right.
and she was doing what she was
The
being
trust.
compliant.
Yeah. She was trusting the doctors. Yeah. So, yeah, since she was really one to push back, and it's too bad that we didn't have the information then that we have now, from doctors like Dr. Fung, and Kim
Yeah.
Berry, and all these doctors. And so we have so many, like, look, Susan was a Southern gospel singer. Oh
Oh
my
wow.
goodness. I love this. We've got so many. And Kim's dad was he, he traveled. Your dad was in a band. I love that. That is so cool. So, music brings people together, and that's one reason why I love it. I just feel like you can have people that you're like, don't have anything in common with politically, or, in all these other areas, but yet you like the same music. And,
Hmm.
yeah, it's really cool. So
Now
awesome. Well,
metal is my favorite, my very favorite, but I will tell you, I like most genres of music,
I do too.
something. Now, I love old school country, like we're talking maybe from the 80s back,
Yeah.
the 80s back. And like I was raised on like 60s and 70s country, the old people like Roy Acuff and Hank Snow, people like that,
Yeah.
and Hank Williams,
Hmm.
people like that. And then in later years, it was like Randy Travis, folks like that. Uh, of course, then when I discovered rock, I sort of like I can look back now and I have fond memories of the country music and I actually do like it. But of course, the the discovery of rock/metal was like I didn't have any interest in country anymore.
Yeah.
There was a time, and of course, you don't want to like the music your parents liked anyway, and that was terrible.
Well, my parents, yeah, listened to kind of hymns. They had this radio station on that was always on. My mom was always listening to it. It was called Family Radio, and it was a Christian radio station. And the only music they had was hymns, and it was pretty, and it was like people that had
Hmm.
good voices and everything.
Yeah.
But that was the only music that was played. But my dad was a musician. My dad played the electric guitar, but it was not what it is now. I mean, it was
Right.
back, he was in, my dad was born in 1926. And so he is, are you familiar at all with Chet Atkins?
Yes, that was
Yeah,
my dad's favorite. My dad plays
my
guitar, and
dad
my
too.
dad just loved Chet Atkins. Yeah,
Yes, my
yeah.
dad could play. He used to play Chet Atkins songs on his guitar, and he was in a military band when he was in the Navy, and he was in World War II, and he was in the Navy for quite a bit longer. But yeah, he played that, and then he taught himself. He was all self-taught, and he taught himself how to play the organ.
My dad was too, and he self-taught himself to play. Let's see, he played the fiddle and the what is it, the little guitar, that what is it, ukulele, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it is, the ukulele. But I mean, he's taught himself how to play several things, but of course, guitar is his first love, and he plays it the best. And I remember he used to play Malaguena, which was Roy Acuff did that. It's a very
My
complicated,
dad used to play that too.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, look at this. All of them come. See,
Yeah,
music. People have music in common. That's
yeah.
so cool. I know learned to play anything.
I didn't either.
Yeah, and I took lessons, but I didn't have the patience for it. Look at this. All these musicians.
Now my son plays
Oh, look.
piano. Wow, Simpson plays Chet.
Simpson
That's
plays Texas on the
impressive.
guitar. Awesome.
Chet is, yeah, Chet was like
He was
incredible.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you guys don't have ever heard of Chet Atkins, look him up. I'm sure there's stuff on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
And when my dad was on his deathbed and he was, we had him on the morphine drip and everything because he was dying. So we had him on comfort care, and he had gotten to the place where he was unconscious and he had gotten into a coma. And I was playing him Chet Atkins on my phone, and he was tapping his foot.
Oh
He
my.
heard. Yeah.
So he knew. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, so he could hear. So Chet Atkins has a special place in my heart because of that. So Kim, yeah, oldest son taught himself to play the guitar. Wow. That's good. My goodness, so many self-taught. Look at these.
Yeah, my dad self-taught him, or my dad taught himself, but then my son started like, of course, now his paternal grandfather, and then my son, my kid's dad, he also played piano and was extra. Oh man, super good. And so then my son, there was always a piano around, whether it was at our house or whether it was at his grandparents' house. And so he started picking out songs like when he was very little. And so he started like teaching himself. And so then we, signed him up for lessons and stuff. So my son plays piano and he plays drums. And if I were to play an instrument, it would probably be drums. Like I
Oh
air
wow.
drum when I listen to music. I can't, yeah, I don't know. I just catch myself drumming.
Have you watched that guy that puts a lot of like stuff on YouTube for his drumming?
Uh,
That's a really good drummer.
I've watched several, like, has he done, well, I'm sure every
He's
drummer's
from
probably
another
done.
country. I forget his name. If you guys
Oh,
know his name, let us know. But my husband watches him, and he's pretty darn incredible. He puts out stuff all the time where he's pretty amazing.
mhm.
So cool. Well, I'm going to let you go. I know we've been almost an hour and a half on the chat here, and I'm so glad that your health is good, your anxiety is gone. That honestly, that alone
Yeah,
is a reason to be on this diet.
I
Just
agree. And that's what,
because,
here's the
yeah,
thing, because I think there might be folks out there who either think there is no hope, or they think maybe that carnivore keto wouldn't be for them because they're not trying to lose weight, because it is,
right.
and that is a fabulous benefit of it. It regulates your weight. And I think it is easy to undereat if you're on this way of eating, and especially if you have odd eating habits like me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a strange bird, but uh,
But it does
I
lend itself to intermittent fasting.
Yeah, it does. It sure does. And so, but I just want people to know that it can help them because I don't have like an obvious story. Like I don't have a before and after that you can see.
Right.
And so, and of course, then it's bad because I'm not really a cook either, although I've been trying to experiment with some things like with the Ninja Foodie and that kind of thing, cooking ribeyes and burgers in it, various things. But I don't know. I feel like people just think of keto carnivore as something that people do to lose weight, and
Right.
they may have heard about some of the non-scale victories, but really when you get down to it, I really think that everything that's wrong with humanity right now all stems from the same thing, and that's diabetes and food. I
Mm,
truly believe that just the food that we eat contributing to diabetes, and it's just it manifests itself in various ways throughout people's bodies. And you don't have to be, overweight, obese, whatever, to be diabetic. I mean, type 2, I'm talking. I know type
yeah.
1s typically can be thin, but I just want people to know, though, that if they suffer from anxiety, they suffer from panic attacks, that they don't have to live that way. And at least if they could give low carb a try and
Yeah.
then ease into, I think a lot of people end up doing this. They start out with low carb and then they just
Yeah.
gradually just work their way down. And then once you do, it's just an amazing experience. I'm just flummoxed because I mean, I had been, like I said, ketovore, and just
Yeah.
that bit of veg that I was eating made that much difference. It's
That's amazing.
incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible when you think about it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Awesome. Well, it sounds like I mean, you can encourage people, anybody who's dealing with mental health issues, your story is very inspiring and motivating for anybody who wants to overcome anxiety. And I don't know if you can say one, like anxiety versus depression, is worse. They're both bad,
Yes,
you know, and but it can help both.
it sure can.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for coming on. I am going to wrap this up. We've been on the here for almost an hour and a half. I could talk to you forever, I'm sure. And we had a lot of
Oh,
fun.
I
I'm glad we
know.
got to,
It'll be midnight and we're still
yeah, so glad we got to talk a little bit about music too. And
yeah.
I love music. I've thought of, starting a reaction channel or something because I love music so much. But
Well, that would be fun to
anyways,
do. I love watching reaction channels too. So if you ever
I
do
do
that, let me know.
too. I really love watching reaction channels. And so I thought, why am I spending all this time watching reaction channels? Why don't I start one? But we'll see. I'm right now, I don't even know if I could set up the technology to do it. So
Yeah,
let's hope
that's
we get great
it's complicated to
conversation.
do that stuff. I mean, like, well, doing quality YouTube is just complicated anyway, and I'm working on it. I mean, the videos when I first started are pathetic, but you learn as you
You
go.
learn.
But
Exactly.
boy, when you get into some of the stuff that these reactors do and the various cameras and all of that, and it's just and they're it's like they have this whole setup, and it's just like, ooh, you know,
A little bit intimidating.
yeah, it is.
Awesome. Well, we have some nice comments here. Very nice. Well, I'm so
Um,
happy that those of you who came and participated in the chat. Yeah, Kim, actually, I heard that we can do it on StreamYard. Um,
mhm.
I know how to do it there. I haven't. I think StreamYard. You'll have to let me know because I think that a StreamYard. I don't know if it lets you like expand it out to the whole screen and then like have yourself down in the corner. I don't know, but I'm looking into it. We'll see. Maybe one of these days I'm going to have
Yeah,
you.
I haven't tried anything like that. I don't. Well, I did do what? Well, but did I do that? I don't think I did that on StreamYard. I think I did that one on Canva, maybe, where I had the article where I was doing all the searches for the
For
metal
the
musicians who
yeah,
eat
metal
meat.
music.
And I think it minimized I had meat, but I didn't do that one on StreamYard. That was just because it wasn't a lot. I mean, I didn't film it there or anything. I did it I think it was Canva that I might have done that on. So
Oh,
I don't know.
okay. Yeah, I have OBS Studio, which a lot of reactors use, and I just think like my MacBook Pro is needs to be a newer version. It's
Hmm.
not really compatible. The headset and everything isn't really compatible. So, yeah. Anyway, so good. So we have a lot of nice comments here. Thank you guys so much
Thanks,
for
everybody.
coming
I
in.
appreciate you watching and being here with us. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, one of these days, honestly, all of you guys in the chat, one of these days, I want you guys to start joining us on these live streams so we could like meet you. Don't be shy. You're not shy in the chat. So
Right?
oh, yes, it's like I would love to meet a lot of people who don't have YouTube channels but are so engaged in the community. It would be so
Hmm.
nice. Yeah. So, anyways, if you guys ever want to come on, please just say in the chat, bring me on, and we'll do it. So
Yeah, and if anybody is interested, I'm going to ramp up the lives again after the first of the year. So if
yeah, so
anybody
if
is
they want
interested,
to
yeah.
contact you and if they want to be on a live with you, what is the best option for them to contact you?
Um, the best option, well, I can just tell you my Gmail address is my metamorphosis, spelled the same way as my channel. And that's my Gmail address. I've heard that YouTube doesn't take it too kindly when people, like share emails in comments. I don't know if
Right.
that's
I've
so.
heard that too, that they may just
Yeah.
delete it if you
Mm-hmm.
share it that way. Yeah. So, okay. So
Yeah.
my metamorphosis at gmail.com. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to
Or
contact,
and it's also on my profile page or whatever, like in my YouTube
yes.
profile. And then I also have
Okay.
an Instagram account, which is also same address at my metamorphosis on Instagram.
Excellent.
So feel
Excellent.
free to reach out to me, y'all. I love hearing from people.
Absolutely. Yeah, reach out to Carrie. And if you guys want to reach out to me, same thing, midlifecarnivore@gmail.com. And I have a midlife carnivore Instagram as well. So we want to get as many people as
Yep.
possible, hear their stories. And you guys probably already know this, but I am on the research committee for the carnivore diet documentary. And we are always looking for people who can share their stories and to see whether or not they'd be candidates for the documentary. So if you have not applied to be in the documentary, go over to the carnivoredietmovie.com and submit an application to be in it. I'm the one that gets those applications and reviews them. So, and I reach out to people and, I'll interview you. If you don't have a channel, it's okay. One of us will interview you, and we want to get the stories out there. So my story is boring, though. Nobody's story is boring. Nobody's story is boring. But I can milk all that information out of you. Awesome. Okay. All right. And nobody's story is boring because
That's right.
if you were brave enough to do the carnivore diet, there's nothing boring about you.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, you're a
Yes.
rebel, man.
You're
You're a
a
rebel.
rebel.
You are more metal than Rob Zombie.
Exactly. Yeah, look at Kim. She cured chronic candida. It's embarrassing. I don't care. Exactly. That's how you got to be. You got to just be like, someone's going to relate to you. Someone is gonna.
Hmm.
That's why I like to interview all sorts of people, because like someone's going to relate to Carrie that doesn't relate to me, because we went into this for completely different reasons and we both are seeing amazing benefits.
Yep.
So awesome. Okay. All right. We're going to say goodnight. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their evening.
Good
All right.
night, everybody.
Good
See you
night,
all soon. I love
everybody.
ya.
Love you.